bonjour, and welcome to WT France, the weekly podcast in which we talk about WTF happened in French politics in the last 7 days. I'm your co-host Juliette, and I am speaking into a brand new microphone that I think Pepijn is going to tell you all about.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to a new world with new equipment. We now have a little box called
The box?
the Focaster box.
The box.
Focaster 2 box. But mostly it has green LEDs on it and red LEDs. And if we shout too loud, it's red. So this was probably not good.
That's the future then.
It was also very affordable. Maybe the sound quality is better. Let's actually hope so. Anyway, let's move on with the podcast. Juliette, what is the name of the new Prime Minister of France?
This was a fun question at first when
Still
we
is.
started the podcast. But I am starting to hate it because it is the same answer week after week after week after week. And it's getting a little bit depressing as a French person to see what's happening to democracy.
Do you think Macron hates the question too? Is it Macron? Did he just make himself prime minister?
It feels like he is governing all on his own right now. I think Macron kind of loves this in a way. It keeps him nicely at the center of the attention. Like what happens in France usually when you get a prime minister who's not of the same political party as the president is that the president vanishes more in the background, and Macron is not the type of man who likes to vanish in the background.
I think there's a meme with Homer Simpson where he hides behind a bush. So even if you hate it, what is the progress? Are people still bringing up the X-Man, Xavier Bertrand?
Oh God, don't make him sound cool. Don't call him the X-Man. Oh God. But yeah, his name is still floating around, actually more and more. So on this, actually, we got a very interesting comment on our podcast page that I wanted to mention. This is also how we discovered people can leave comments on our podcast page, by the way. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so because I want to mention it first because it was actually a good call out that I quite underplayed Mélenchon's position on Russia and Ukraine last week. I think when you brought it up, I was so focused on Xavier Bertrand that I kind of flubbed it a bit, but it was a very good point made in those comments. Mélenchon has been more than wishy-washy on Russia. Him and LFI have been way too equivocal for my taste. Basically, their view on Ukraine was France and Europe, we should just not get involved at all. And it's created a lot of disagreement within LFI, but that's kind of the prominent position of the party. And that was also one of the main reasons why quite a few people in the other parties in the NFP weren't super happy at the idea of the alliance. And Mélenchon's not popular with all of the left. It's the kind of nuance that get lost abroad when you're like, he's the biggest figure on the left, so you think he's leading, but that's why he's one of the reasons he's still divisive.
I think I should apologize a little bit for the fact that I actually knew a historical French politician, knew facts about this, and then completely threw you off by having knowledge. So apologies for having knowledge.
No, you are more useful to this podcast than just as the useful idiot. So you can feel free to share some knowledge occasionally.
Excellent. We'll talk about the blue Smurf later then.
Yeah. All Smurfs are blue, Pepijn. This is a key part of Smurfs. So blue Smurf is
I think this,
redundant.
let's move on because, anyway, we get comments on that. Is that still his position? Mélenchon, so get back to that. Is that still his position?
So he's not talking about it as much, and I think maybe he's moved a bit on it purely because I think he's realizing it's really not scoring him any political points. And at the very least, this is not top billing news. No one really talks about this right now in French politics. So yeah, but I think it was a good call out in that comment. But another reason I really like that comment is that it referred to Xavier Bertrand as right-wing Flanby. And that nickname has so many layers that it's perfect for this podcast. So I want to dive into right-wing Flanby a little bit.
So I saw the comment as well. And I purposely didn't look up what it was, but you seem to look like you're loving this.
I really am.
So tell me about Flanby.
First, I guess we need to ask, what is a Flanby? Do you know what a Flanby is? Have you ever had one?
What? No?
Okay.
I don't think so. Maybe would I have seen one in France?
You might have. A Flanby it's a food product, so you eat it.
French food product. So it's probably something organic, made in a small farm, and it probably smells like goat poop. Goats, I mean. All goats smell like goat poop.
It's super industrial. It is, I think, not what you would picture when you think of French gastronomy. Okay, so I've got a Wikipedia tab ready because I knew I wanted to show you this. So if you look on Wikipedia, and I suggest to our listeners, like maybe we'll link the page in the show notes.
People say that on podcasts.
Yes.
There is a link in the show notes to Flanby.
So Flanby is a dessert. It is a kind of vanilla custard flan that is served in a little plastic pot. And like at the bottom of the plastic pot, there's like caramel sauce. And the way you eat it, you don't like eat it out of the pot. You like
I would
open the top flap and then you put it upside down in a plate.
I've had this.
And then at the bottom, once you reveal that, there's like this little aluminum tab that you pull and it like removes the vacuum, and then the custard flops down at the bottom of the plate, and then you lift out the plastic thing and the caramel sauce just kind of leaks on the sides. And it is such a glorious thing. Like it's like the first unboxing experience coming for food for so many French kids.
And then, because I now realize I had this, so it looks amazing, it flows over, and then you take the first bite and you realize, this is disgusting.
No, it's delicious.
It's disgusting.
What is wrong with you? So like...
Well, what's wrong with me? I am the Dutch person here. My quiz... My culinary tradition is a potato with random sauce over it, whatever is the cheapest. Mm-hmm. You're from France.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not
what
saying
is wrong with you?
I think this is not... No one's going to defend this as like high gastronomy. Though like you can get like a nice caramel custard in France, like done slightly classier.
Yeah, but probably with a raw egg or something.
But like
France.
For French kids, like when we'd get that at the canteen when I was a kid, like that was a really cool day. Like you'd get these very occasionally because they're quite expensive by like the unit. So like canteens, they have small budgets.
Because they have the expensive Duralex glasses already.
But like this was a huge deal as a kid. And so
let's move on. So what is
what does it have to do with politics?
Have to do with politics?
So you know how it's like a little bit floppy and kind of like...
Yeah, the picture on the Wikipedia page, I will describe that. So it has, there is a comment under it, Flanby removed from the pot. What you see is a plate. There is a puddle of brownish diarrhea-like custard, I guess, caramel custard. Then a little bit sideways, like the Tower of Pisa, there is the cream bit in it, the blobby bit, the brainy bit. It's a bit sideways, looks a bit sad, like it was plopped there from about 3 meters high.
So this Flanby still is the nickname of President François Hollande.
Who could be described, I suspect, by some people, would be a little bit libelous.
So here's the thing. Like, so Flanby is also like a super average dessert. It's literally vanilla. And it's quite jiggly. Like a little bit, there's a little bit of body shaming in there. And anyway, that's basically François Hollande as president. We called him like Mr. Average.
That makes actually a lot of sense. And how aware of all of this is François Hollande himself?
I mean, I assume he knows. Like everyone in France calls him Flanby.
Do you think when his wife gets him gets him a Flanby on those special occasions? That she opens it and says, you weird. Can be a cannibal tonight.
So François Hollande, who is like, to me, one of the men on the planet with the least sex appeal, like he's divorced. And I think he just keeps on getting new girlfriends.
Okay.
I mean, I guess, he's a man with
I hope
certain
every
amount
single one of them buys a Flambys at the end of the relationship.
Oh, God, that would be hilarious. But
And he's like, oh, not again. When they go to Intermarché, not again.
Anyway, so Hollande's not been president for a while now, and I feel about him the way I feel about Mélenchon, for different reasons, but it's both kind of very prominent left-wing men that I am very frustrated I might have or have voted for in the past, where I'm like, yeah, I guess you'll do it if I have no other choice, but oh my God, can we have other choices, please?
So that's the Mr. Average type. So what about our dude, Mr. So I'm not going to call him X-Man again.
No.
Our dude, Mr. Bertrand.
So the comment I mentioned calls him right-wing Flanby, and I can't unsee that. I think in a way it could really serve him well, because if that's the way he's seen, I've only seen that comment call him right-wing Flanby. But that would be very anti-Macron, at least in attitude, because Flanby makes everyone think of Mr. Average. And Macron's nickname is Jupiter, because he's powerful, he makes a decision and everyone just falls in line. And that's starting to really, really annoy people, the way Macron is gathering all powers. And so being Mr. Average compared to that might actually be popular.
So do you think Macron will pick him?
I think at this point, Xavier Bertrand might be his favorite choice for quite a few different reasons. First, it's a good chance for the policies that he likes, because Macron's policies, they're quite right-wing at this point. He started under Hollande, since we've just brought him up. So he started under a left-wing government, and he's just been moving steadily to the right throughout his career, to the point that now, he was left, then center-left, then center-right, and I think now Macron is just full-on right. So having a prime minister on the right would actually be pretty much matching his views on most things. But also it allows him to keep his hands clean, because he's still someone from a different party. So you can still go oh, well, that's what the prime minister did, blah, 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 if something becomes unpopular. I think that might be his favorite choice. But he's now finally taking an interest in the people who've been elected in the assembly. So he's pretending oh, I'm still looking at what all the possibilities are. So this week, what he's done is issued an invitation to the leaders of the parliamentary groups who have been chosen in the National Assembly for talks in the Élysée. So the invitation was this week, and the actual talks are next week.
It's a big country, yeah.
You got a long way to go. I think mostly everyone's on holiday right now.
You could pick them all up in his plane.
I don't think that would go well with the Green Party, at least.
Like a school trip. The Green Party would probably sit all the way at the back.
No, I think they would just make a point of taking the train. Anyway, so the NFP has said they want to bring Lucie Castet. It seems like it might actually happen, so hopefully he'll finally acknowledge her existence. That would be nice to have.
What about the current government? Are they still caretaking?
They still are. And actually continues to blow my mind that this is not a bigger deal in the media. We are way past unconstitutional, and everyone is acting like it's normal. And it's very frustrating for me, because I find it so undemocratic. We've got a government that's just sitting on a part of the Constitution that's bad, and they're not being called out on it. And that's even worse. What are the checks and balances that we can have on our governments if they can just happily ignore the Constitution and no one calls them out? The fiction that we are living in right now is because they're a caretaker government, it's okay. But the concept of the caretaker government doesn't exist in the Constitution. It's just sort of this thing that we all agree, okay, it's like
a working rule.
Well, you've got, imagine you're driving a car with a group of friends, and then at some point, all of you go the driver is actually really bad at driving. So we tell him okay, dude, you stop. We're going to get another driver. You don't push him off the driver's seat. You still give a couple minutes to go oh, let's find a parking lot where we can switch drivers, because everyone knows pushing him off while he's driving, that's even more dangerous.
Yeah.
So we agree on that fiction that you're driving, but we know that you're the bad driver. But that only works, if the guy agrees to pull off on the side of the road. What happens if he doesn't? Then you do need to do the dangerous thing and push him off and say, like, we're actually going to remove you because you are going to get us all killed.
Question. In France, traditionally, this was, I think, called a revolution.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet. And also in a modern world, in a European, Central European democracy, that's probably not the way to do it.
Yeah. So like...
So is there like a middle way, a somewhat legal way of getting the process back into the democratic track?
So, I mean, yeah, the revolution, like we like to joke about chopping heads, but like the realities in France, revolutions have a very bloody history of also killing a lot of innocent people. And I don't truly think that anyone wants that. Well, some people want that, but I don't think most people do. Legally...
Personally, I'm also not a big fan of chopping off the heads of the people who are guilty.
Also... Definitely not.
Emphasis, I think this is the official point of view from this podcast.
Yes, we do not believe in death penalty in this household. So
let them eat Flanby.
Let them eat Flanby, yes. Yeah, in the constitution, the parliament can always censor a government. Traditionally, we don't do that with a transitional government because they're supposed to get off the road and give the driver's seat to someone else very quickly. But that might be the solution. But then you're still in this place where Macron has to name the prime minister, and the constitution does not have a timeline, like he must do it within X amount of days. It's just he must do it.
There's an expectation of reasonableness. Like with the car driving, you agree to take the next reasonable parking lot or exit.
And there's not really a thing of like, what do you do when your friend turns out to be dangerous and refuses to acknowledge it and refuses to get off the road? Like, what do you do then? We don't have that in the constitution.
It seems like an oversight with the history France has.
Yes and no. Like, this constitution has been going strong for quite a long time now. But there's a lot of debate. Like, maybe this is the sign that we need to have a massive constitutional reform, start from scratch, or do like such a large change that it would essentially feel like a new one. So we're currently in what we call the Fifth Republic in France. There's a lot of debates that like maybe this is time for the Sixth Republic, where the powers of the president are a lot more reined in than they used to be.
I think that's what they tried in the second Star Wars movie as well.
Yeah. And so we're way past unconstitutional. But also, this is slowly creating a backup, especially, I mentioned last week, the finance law. So right now, we still have a lot of buffer on creating the finance law. Like, it needs to be voted on at the latest December 31st. So you got a few months. But what should be happening right now is what we are calling the sealing letters. And that's where the ministries send to different administrations, like, what is your cap, the amount of money that you'll have to play with. And from that, they do draft budgets where you start with that big number and then get more granular. Here's where we'll spend money, etc. And it's like a big back and forth between administrations, kind of like the policy people and then the political people. I think every country has that. You need to have this balance between like public servants for whom this is a job, and the politicians who are like, this is how we want to orientate how the policies go. And so usually these sealing letters are done by mid-August, and mid-August is right now, and that has not happened yet.
How are more regional and even local governments involved in this? Are they, especially regional governments, are they asking?
We've got a total of 13 regions in France, which is not a lot compared to the size of the country and the amount of people. So each of the heads of these regions are actually very high-level politicians. And right now, they're all biding their times to see how the situation at the national stage evolves. Several of them are planning to run for president in 3 years. And they are placing themselves in that race, whether they are on the left or on the right, as people who could be very strong contenders. And so I think right now they're trying to not get too closely involved, with the notable exception, of course, of Xavier Bertrand, who is the head of the Hauts-de-France region.
But he doesn't come across as a person, at least not to me, that eventually could do the step up to president.
I think he thinks of himself like that.
Okay.
I think he would want to be considered, yeah.
Okay. So, we're getting quite on in time in the podcast. An important other question. Blue Smurf related news. Olympics. I have Olympics withdrawal. Any news on that?
No Blue Smurfs news. I don't think we'll be getting these for a while. We do have some leftover judicial news from the Olympics, though. Iman Khelif, the Algerian boxer whose gender was questioned by wholly unqualified people, has filed a complaint for online harassment against a whole bunch of people, including Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling.
So it's not that they don't approve of suing, well, basically not great people. But why is it happening in France? She is from Algeria. She's Algerian. They're British and American, and Elon Musk, I guess, South African as well.
But the harassment started when she was in France. So the reasoning is that this is where it took place. I guess it's tricky because the act was online.
Yeah.
So jurisdiction is going to be a contest. And I bet people like Musk and Rowling, they can afford to pay lawyers who will argue jurisdictions in circles forever. And I really wish Iman Khelif absolute best of luck with that. In case this wasn't clear to the listeners yet, this is absolutely an Iman Khelif supporting podcast.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to make a list of what we support and not support as a podcast collective. I'm glad we can still finish podcasts on the Olympics for now. And the Paralympics are starting soon, so maybe we can keep it up a little bit.
You know, a month ago, you were asking me, who cares about the Olympics?
I don't think I did. You can't prove it.
Literally, we have a recording. It was you saying it on this podcast.
I think the technology is running out of time, so I can't hear you.
La 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 la.
La 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 la.
Okay, that's a wrap for this week then. À la semaine prochaine.
La la la. Bye.